Ho ho and a welcome to Steve's Kitchen. It's that time of the year when I love to make a homemade figgy pudding, plum pudding, Christmas pudding, whatever you like to call it. I call it just delicious. And making your own at home, you just can't beat it. If you've never had Christmas pudding before, think of fruitcake on steroids. I mean, this is a pudding bowl. This is what we're going to be baking it in. And that is just the start of the fruit we're putting in there. You've got your lovely sun-dried raisins in there, currants. There's some candied peel, which is really essential, and glacé cherries. But we don't just stop there with your dried fruit. I've got a whole cup full of dried dates, which I've just chopped up. You can use figs, of course. The dried fruits are up to your imagination. Cranberries, apricots, anything will do. Overall, you're looking for about a pound or half a kilo of dried fruits, plus the dates. We always start our Christmas pudding by rehydrating our fruits. So I pop them into a bowl and the dates go in there as well. Now we're going to add in a couple of tablespoons of gorgeous molasses. You can add treacle in there, of course. Blackstrap molasses is really good. A dark stout, I'm using Guinness. Try and get a local stout if you can. And we're going to put a cup of that in there. I always then add in a really big glug of brandy as well. I haven't got any brandy with me at the moment, so a really nice sherry works just as well. Lastly, we're just going to take a lemon and we're going to take the zest off of this lemon and grate it in with our fruit, just to add some fresh zestiness into it. And an orange too. We're just going to take the zest off of a large orange. Now, give that a good stir through. We're just going to leave this out on the side for at least 8 hours or overnight so it absorbs all that beautiful moisture and plumps up, and then we can get on and make the second half of the recipe. So I've left that overnight. Just come and take a look how beautiful the fruit is. All those gorgeous fruit now have plumped up. They've absorbed all that wonderful juice. An alternative, by the way, of using alcohol would be to use the juice from the orange and the lemon in here to let that plump up the fruit instead. So now it's time to turn this fruit into a Christmas pudding. We've got 100 grams, 3.5 ounces of soft compacted brown sugar, 100 grams, 3.5 ounces of breadcrumbs, and that's just to bulk up the pudding. Next, that lovely suet. We've got 100 grams, again, 3.5 ounces of suet, and this really adds the flavour that we recognise in a traditional Christmas pudding. To help bind the whole thing together, this time we've just got 60 grams, that's 2 ounces of all-purpose or plain flour. To add a rich and bitter darkness, I'm adding a couple of tablespoons of dark cocoa. Now for sure, use dried ginger. I love fresh ginger in my Christmas pudding, so I'm just going to grate in about half a teaspoon or the equivalent of fresh ginger. Add in a couple of teaspoons of mixed spice and half a teaspoon extra of cinnamon. We are going to put this fresh Granny Smith apple in there. Now, if you can get a cooking apple like a Bramley, go for it. And I just like to grate the apple up. Add the grated apple in with all the seasoning and spices. And lastly, also to help bind the pudding together, we're going to add in 2 eggs. And now we're going to mix all these ingredients together to get a beautiful Christmas pudding mix. Now you do want to mix this until you get a lovely even mixture. I have a 1.2 litre pudding bowl here. That's about 2.5 US pints. And what we want to do is to pack our pudding mixture into the bowl. Now you can tell I've done this a lot. That fits in there just about perfectly. Now I'm just going to tap my pudding down, get any air bubbles out of it. Next, take a piece of baking paper, fold it over, and then fold it again. And just continue to fold this over until you get a decent point like that. Hold the pointy end to the center of the pudding and then just cut yourself around like that. And we create ourselves a beautiful little circle of paper just to pop on top of the pudding. Next, take a big piece of baking foil. And what I want you to do is just fold a pleat in the center of the foil. And this is just to allow the pudding to expand a little bit as it cooks. So we get the pleat in the center and then tightly fold this over the top of the pudding basin. Now get a nice tight seal around the foil. You could use a bit of string around here. A lot of you know from previous Steve's Kitchen's Christmas puddings, I cook these normally in a pressure cooker, which does save a lot of time. We haven't got our pressure cooker on this part of our world tour, so we're going to do it a much simpler way. Get yourself a nice deep baking tray, and you're either going to use an upturned saucer, or I've got a little trivet here. Pop it in the bottom. we're going to pop our pudding bowl onto the trivet, and that's just to keep it off of the direct heat of the oven. And then we want to fill our tray with water. And the reason we want a fairly deep tray is because we want it to come at least an inch up the side of the pudding basin. The next thing I'm going to do is actually tent this over with some more foil. So what I've done here is I've made a little tent over the top of my pudding to keep the steam in. If you had a nice big clay pot with a big lid, you could do that, but you'd need to seal around the join of the pot just to keep the steam inside. We're going to be cooking this on a fairly modest heat. I've got an oven preheated to 110 degrees Celsius, that's 220 Fahrenheit, and we're going to cook this for about 3.5 to 4 hours. Now you might want to check the water level about halfway and just top it up if it needs it. Be careful, the water will be super hot. And if you're preferring the idea of doing this in a pressure cooker, just Google Steve's Kitchen Christmas pudding and you can see my previous recipe where I used the pressure cooker with all the instructions for that. Okay, carefully I'm bringing this out of the oven. Now you can see how the Christmas pudding is domed there. It's pushed the top up. The house smells divine. Now I didn't need to top this up at all with water through the whole cook. So if you get a good seal on there, you should have the same results. Definitely be a little careful when you take off the foil because steam is going to come out. But you can see the pudding is intact. The water is still almost as high as it was when I started. And you'd expect it to dome like that. That is pretty much it. I'm going to let that cool down completely and you can store this in the pantry. And don't forget, you can keep this all the way through to next year just in a pantry. It will last, but we're going to be eating this on Christmas. Come Christmas Day, you can re-steam this for about an hour and get that beautiful smell of Christmas pudding filling the house again. Or you can just heat it in the microwave for about 5 or 10 minutes just to warm it through. Whatever you decide to do, just enjoy and have a great Christmas. Now I've got a video on my channel showing how to flame the Christmas pudding. If you're interested in that, check it out. I really hope that you've enjoyed and joined me making Christmas pudding this year. If you have, send me across some pictures on any social media you like. Be good, and I will see you very shortly for another fantastic episode of Steve's Kitchen. Take care.